Alright, so this is what we got from forging last night. I can see that there's some imbalance in the blades, but all in all, I think I might be able to grind that out. This looks relatively straight. So we'll give it a go. So first things first, I start by just grinding the scale off of this knife. Just about 36 grit, dragging it across as even and flat as I can, just to make sure that that very hard scale on an old belt doesn't tear up a new belt when we switch over to do the surface grinder. And we knock this out pretty quick. Many people will say to put your own spin on a knife, which I will, but I'm drawing out the design that Royer had for a hunter, because if he's the master, why not follow what works perfectly every time? What I'm doing here is I'm just grinding off all the sharp edges on the blade and kind of smoothing out some of the surfaces that I plan to mark up with some layout fluid and start taking measurements so that I can get my ricasso and all those pieces of the blade laid out as best and mechanically designed as I can. So this is the center scribe. Go ahead and lay the layout fluid over the center line. Drag it across a drill bit, just slightly smaller than the width of the knife on either side, so you get about, a very small 2-edge center line that you can grind towards. Next, we're going to set up the file jig, and we're going to grind up towards the ricasso areas so that you can ensure you get a good fit when you're placing up your guard or any of your spacers in. What I've learned is that it's going to be easier overall for you to draw everything out and have a good solid plan before you start making changes. Some of these things I'm learning as I go and trying to make adapted things function, and it just becomes more difficult. Now, once you start getting into the grinding, one of the biggest things to remember that I have been taught is that this should be one of the hardest parts of making the knife. It needs to be straight, there needs to not be ripples or what they call false edges, and you need to not over grind and burn the tip or potentially have a warp in your process. Once you get to the heat treatment stage, every part of this takes an insane amount of patience, calm, and probably most important, just level of expertise from practice. So this process just takes a long time, no two ways about it. And this is how it looks at this stage. There's a couple of false edges, but all in all, I'm pretty happy with that as a stopping point for about day 3. This is the time that I'm going to try and cut an antler and make it work. It takes a lot longer on a bandsaw than you would like, and because I don't have the plate put down, it's jerking it around and you don't want to drag your finger through it, so make sure you're being careful. When it comes to working with the antler, you want to get all the dimensions from an eye's glance to look symmetrical. So as the antler shrinks, as there's natural curves, you kind of want to follow that and adjust that, and it just takes some time. You have to make sure that the handhold is as effective and ergonomic as gripping any other handle. So you want to work that knot out, but you don't want to do it in such a way that you remove all the beauty of the natural elements of the antler, and you don't want to go against the natural curves in any place. So once I get it curved and cut a little bit, I cut off the chunk that I think is about the size that I should need, and we move on to the next step, which is kind of laying things out all together and doing final grinding. Again, I'm laying all these things out kind of after the fact. One part of this is using an antler. It can be very difficult unless you go through the process of straightening it. I might shoot a video on that later, but that takes a lot of work as well. So using an antler to function with a knife and working around it is almost something I would have done differently at the forging stage, and just forged the curve of the handle blade a little differently so that it would have made this process a little more seamless. But again, I'm kind of between a few steps here. This is just a rough layout of what it's going to look like. Traditional hunter, nice antler, and some brass guard fit up. So we'll see how it turns out.